I was gonna start installing it into the cases before I put them together, but I kind of wanted to treat this like you were going to be doing it at home. Maybe you weren't splitting your cases, you just wanted to rebuild the transmission itself. So I decided to just go ahead and do it with the cases together, you know, as if it was still in a bike. So what we'll do is we'll start with bearings. We've got the lay shaft bearings here, and then these are the two main shafts. This one's going to go in here, this one goes in here, and then these two go in the case. And so everything's really well marked. He's got little stickers on everything. I mean, down to even the fact that he put open and closed on the needle bearings for the lay shaft. I would not have the patience for this, so I am very, very impressed with, you know, him doing this. So please go spend your money with him to make it worth his while. Right off the bat, I'm going to kind of cover the fact that, you know, I tell people this often, but it's even better because he's got it in the little booklet that's going to come with it. He's got do's and don'ts, and one of the very first things he says is, do heat your cases, and then the very first thing in don't is do not freeze your bearings. I always tell people just a little bottle of propane is perfect. It's safe. You know, you can't get carried away with it, really. I mean, you'd really have to do something foolish to cause any problems, but that's going to be plenty. And again, if you had this split apart, you could bake the cases and then put, you know, this bearing and then your two transition bearings in all at the same time. So there are options. Acetylene is not a good choice. You're really just going to be able to get the perfect heat with one of those small propane torches. So that's what I suggest. That's the easiest to use. So I'm going to go ahead. I can't really frame up doing these, so I'm just going to go ahead and get the cases warmed up, get these in. You also don't need to use a hammer on these. If you get your cases to the right temp, this should just drop right in. And so once you've got your case warm, you should just be able to drop this in and hear it hit the back with a nice solid thud. Do it once, so get it up to temp. Make sure you're where you need to be before you try installing it, so that way you don't have to fight it back out and have it crooked or any of that kind of stuff. So they do like to go in. If they aren't going in, you're not warm enough. So just kind of keep that in mind. Same with this. You know, you warm up this inner cover and you drop that bearing and you'll hear it hit that bottom side. So that's how you know you did a good job. Normally, I like to use gravity as my friend. So if you were doing that flat on the bench and you got up to temp, that bearing would just fall and drop and you'd hear it. But I just use my bearing driver to just seat it, you know, make sure I was all the way against that back. But it doesn't take a lot of heat, you know. You can get quite a bit of expansion out of aluminum. Again, if you're fighting it, something's wrong. You either didn't heat it enough or you're trying to put it in crooked, whatever the reason is, but it should go really smoothly. I'm going to go ahead while I still got some heat in it. I'm going to get that lay shaft bearing in. You do need a special driver, and luckily, like the Triumph books and then those little booklets that Dan sends out, they both have directions on how to make one if you don't own one. So I'm going to do that next. A couple things to note about the lay shaft needle bearings is the driver I was talking about. It's got a nice little lipped edge, and you're not going to bottom out. I'll show you on the open-ended one. But it's not going to push on the backside. You want to push evenly on this front edge. And so you want to have a driver that will do that. And then also, it's kind of chewed up, but there's a little hole, pinhole here for that locating dowel that holds the thrust washer in place. So when you set the depth of your needle bearing, which is all in the little booklet, I'll tell you how deep, but when you set that depth, the reason you're doing that is so the thrust washer is going to be more proud than, you don't have your needle bearing sticking out above the edge. You want it to sit behind the edge of the thrust washer. So that's where the depth comes in. And then again, there's a pin for locating the thrust washer, and your driver is all going to accommodate for that. So things to kind of keep in mind. Like I said, there's instructions on how to make one of those. I'm pretty sure you can buy them from some different people, but either way, you just don't want to bottom out a driver into the backside, because you'll blow out the back of the closed end needle bearing. So you'll do the same thing with this one into the inner cover, but we'll do that later. Now that we have the needle bearing in and the fourth gear bearing in, I immediately like to jump into putting in the C-clip, so then that way, or snap ring, so then that way you do not want to forget that clip and then put your seal in. That could be quite tragic. So grab your pliers. Make sure it's fully seated. On the seal, the spring side always faces where the oil is. So if you want to keep the oil in, or the gear oil in the transmission, you want to face that spring towards it. So it will go in that direction. So what I like to do is just kind of get it started. It's got a nice lead in on it. Between you and me, I don't really like these lowbrow stands. If you screw them down to the table, they're kind of nice, but then you have to work from across the table, or lean over and look at it. So they do put holes in the bottom for that. It's kind of nice, I guess, but you can push them around with like one finger, and it's really quite annoying. You have to bear hug it often while working, but just kind of my 2 cents. So at this point, before we get too far, it's really smart to get your fourth gear in, because you never know if you're going to be fighting the sprocket onto the gear, or if it's going to go on really nicely. Sometimes these do not want to cooperate. So I always like to get fourth gear in, so I know if I'm going to have any problems before I've got the entire transmission going together, and then go to stick this on, and then got to pull it all back apart. So the other thing I want to talk about is, if you get this kit from 63 to 68, the bushing protrudes, and then that's what that seal rides on in the sprocket window. If you have 68 to 72 4-speed, it's going to have this snout on the actual fourth gear. So when you're installing your kibble white bushings, your back one will be flush no matter what. I mean, that's a given. But then your front one, there's either going to be flush like on this, or some protrusion like on this. I've got 2 sets of these, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a protrusion one to show you guys, and then obviously this is way easier to just do it flush. But you do need to know, anything you get from Kibble White has to be fitted. It's a good thing. I think a lot of people get very frustrated with it, but it's what you want, because you want to fit it to your main shaft. If these came pre-fitted, there's so many variables. It's a really bad idea. It's just going to cause you problems because what yours measures and what mine measures is going to be different. You know, the amount of shrinkage when it gets pressed in, that could be different. So it's really smart of them to have them undersized, so they have to be properly fitted. These are not sintered bronze or, you know, oil infused bronze or anything like that, so you can use a hone on these. I think they're, it doesn't say on here, but I think they're manganese bronze, so that means they can be honed. So you can take these to a local machine shop or something, and they could hone these to match your main shaft. So very, very cool. Like I said, I'm going to show you on the fourth gear for my engine, because that's more entertaining than doing it for, you know, a flush mounted one. So I'm going to get this pressed out, and then we will install these two bushings. I don't know how well this is going to focus this close up, but one of the big advantages to the two-piece is you've got this little valley in the middle where oil can actually live, and so I mean, these are already a better material, but it will prolong the life of this, you know, fourth gear, because, well, not the gear. It's going to prolong the life of these bushings because there's going to be a constant pool of oil in here lubricating them, and so you don't have to hope that, you know, gear oil from this end makes it all the way out. I ended up scribing a line about 3/1000 deeper than I need, so that way I can kind of sneak up on it, and hopefully that kind of gives me a chance to double check before I go too far with it. But I've got that end installed and flush. I'm gonna press up to that line, check it, and see where we're at. Alright, so both of them are installed. I now am going to go hone it. I actually need to go finish his cylinders really quick, and then I'll switch to the proper bar, but cool. You're not going to probably be able to see this very well, but if you get your little booklet out, you'd be able to kind of follow along. But these little diagrams show you perfectly how this is going. So it's coming in through the main shaft to first gear, then through the lay shaft back into fourth gear, and then to your sprocket, and that gives you your first gear ratio. Then as you shift and your shift forks are moving your gears into the position for the corresponding gear, that's where the position of the cam plate affects the position of the shift forks, which is engaging and disengaging your different gears from, you know, into the dogs into the dog houses is what they're called. And so I'm doing a really bad job of, you know, teaching this. I'm not good at verbalizing what's going on, but hopefully this gives you kind of a visual as to what's going on. Like I said, these little diagrams, I don't remember which years do and don't include these, but certain parts books have them, but this is in that booklet that Dan sends out, so it's pretty handy to have this. But hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding of gear position on the cam plate in correspondence to what's happening in your transmission. But one thing I like to point out is when somebody says that their transition falls out of gear a lot, it's usually because you're not getting a positive engagement from these dogs into the dog houses, and that is almost always due to a bent shift fork, and you can see that a lot. A lot of these shift forks are blued and have like a funny wear pattern, and it's, you know, somebody at some point probably jumped on the shifter and just, you know, tweaked the shift fork, which then is now causing a misalignment, and it's a problem. But you'll also see on some of these cam plates there'll be these huge dings and dents where the little rollers live. There's rollers on these, and wherever they kind of jam you know, very consistently in the cam plate, it will actually cause these big dents and stuff. And so this is actually a really, really nice cam plate, so we don't have to worry about that on this one. But I was hoping I could, you know, do a pretty good job of explaining what's going on in these. I'll try again in another video. I'll just keep trying. Hopefully I say it in a way that makes sense to somebody. But this is actually my transmission. I'm going to show you how to assemble just a pile of gears. Hopefully that's more helpful than this little lesson I just did. Let's see if I can make better sense just speaking less technically. I've shown people this before. It's very, very non-technical, so hopefully that'll be better. It's just a really quick, easy way to match up your gears. You know, instead of sitting here looking, you know, I get people, oh, what part number? Don't make it that hard on yourself, you know. Look at them, and then you quickly kind of can realize what's what. Obviously, it's fourth gear. Anybody can identify that. That's the last gear, or first gear, I guess, to go onto the main shaft. So we know where that goes, so let's put that in the main shaft pile. So the other thing we're going to look at is that's clearly much larger diameter than the main shaft. So that means some of these are going to be too big. Too big to go on the main shaft. So we know that that goes with the lay shaft. So that lay shaft pile fits perfectly. Main shaft pile. You're probably not going to be able to see it. This one does not fit. I don't know if you can see that. So, lay shaft pile. Fits very nicely. Main shaft pile. You should have 4 gears on either, it's a 4-speed, so you have 4 gears on each shaft. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we know these go with this and these go with this. So now we can figure out what order they go in. If you look at these two, also there's only 2 shift forks, so that means that the where the shift fork rides are going to touch each other. So now let's look at each end. That end has dogs on it, so it needs to engage into something. This gear has dogs on it. It needs to engage into something. So if we look, our other option is dog houses. So it needs to have something go into it. That makes sense. 4th gear has something to go into it. That makes sense. So it's not that complicated if you just look at what you've got. Now, does this apply to every transition? Probably not. But for Triumph 650 unit 4 speeds, this works. So we now have a main shaft assembly. We're going to do the same process for our lay shaft. That clearly can't go that far on, so it's going to be the last one that we play with. So now we've got these 2 options. They have to sit together for the shift fork to hold them. We've got dogs, dog houses. We got dogs, only one way. Dogs, dog houses, and they like to engage. So now we have our transmission in the correct order. Might want to turn that around. That is how you can easily identify. So if you disassemble this to clean it, and all of a sudden you've got this pile of gears and you're scared, oh no, which ones go where? It's not that complicated. They can really only go one place. Yes, you could assemble this completely wrong, but it's not going to work. So they can only go one place. So now we can strip it all back apart because we don't want it together to put it in. Now we're going to do my slippery little trick of assembling it inside the case. So let's do that. Like I had said before, you want to get your 4th gear in and make sure nothing's fighting you there as far as your sprocket goes. So this sprocket was already on this bike, so in theory everything should go well, but you don't ever want to assume anything because like even right now it is giving me a little bit of a fit. So you want to make sure that there aren't any issues. Alright. Sometimes you just have to choose another tooth. Rotate it. Okay, so we're good there. We know that that's gonna work. I hope this is focusing on the right area. Okay, you want to put in your plunger housing first. We're gonna run our plunger housing up. I have just a little bit of Hylamar on the threads, nothing crazy, and then the 5739/78 washer. Right, and we're gonna stick our detent in. Now we can put the cam plate, get some assembly lube on the spindle. Alright, what I like to do is take a finger and compress it, and then just essentially like push your finger off, and then that kind of gets you in place. You could use like a screwdriver or something too, but make sure that we're working good. Alright, so now we've got both of these wings sticking straight out. If you look in the book, it'll kind of tell you that that's where you're going to start, is you're using that notch. You're using the notch between second and third gear, and there's not always a notch. You know, if you have the other style cam plate, that notch isn't there. You have to just kind of balance it in between them, but essentially these wings are just going to be kind of both straight out, you know, level. So now that we've got that in place, we've got our fourth gear in, we're going to get our grease on our thrust washer, enough to hold it in place. There's nothing worse than driving that cover home just to have that fall and stop your lay shaft from being in the proper position. So stick that bad boy in. Make sure you locate that dowel pin. Alright, now that that's engaged, put a healthy amount of assembly lube, or you can use gear oil too, but I like doing this just because I don't know how long it's going to be before they run their engine. Alright, that's in place. Our two lay shaft gears. You can add more assembly lube wherever you want, inside the gear. Can never have too much. So now you're going to install the lay shaft gears, and then take your two shift forks and look at those, and you're going to notice one has a smaller radius than the other. The smaller radius goes to the main shaft, and the larger radius goes to the lay shaft. So you're going to take that, get some more of your grease, and hold your roller in place. That way you don't lose it. You can add some more assembly lube. I'm going to say this way too many times. Set that on your two lay shaft gears and put it in place. I really hope this is showing up good. now, next you're going to take the 2 main shaft gears. Same deal, get some assembly lube on them. Take your 2 main shaft gears and balance them on your finger like this. Then take your main shaft shift fork and hold them, and then use your index finger to hold that. So you've got this peace sign deal going on. Then you're going to insert it along the back side of the gearbox, and then kind of it'll find its way down, and then you gently kind of place the shift fork into its groove, and then gently pull your fingers away so you don't lose it. Then take the spindle and you're going to try and catch main shaft shift fork with the spindle while everything's kind of finding its way home. Boom. And you'll probably have to wiggle that around a little bit too, but boom. Okay. Hopefully that was visible. It might take a couple tries, but putting it in that order is, in my opinion, the easiest. I've tried. You can't do it like in the book. I don't know who can do. The book shows the guy sticking his whole hand in with the gear cluster at the same time, and it does not make any sense to me. This is the only way I've ever been able to get it to work, really. You know, maybe there's a different way. I don't know, but this is the only way I can seem to make it happen. But then you're going to take main shaft and get it greasy and slippery and happy. Again, you could use the gear oil you're going to fill this with, but that's happy. And that's happy. So, there you have it. Hopefully that was valuable. Now we'll get this outer cover on. I'm going to actually run this one without the gasket. I talked to this guy and he's cool with it. From the factory they didn't come with a gasket, and a lot of people actually don't run them. These surfaces look really nice. Nobody's ever had a chisel on them. You can actually still see the fly cutting texture from the factory. So really, really good shape. I'm just going to use Hylamar, and that should do the trick, honestly. But you're now ready to get this outer cover or inner cover on, and you're going to want to do the same thing with this other thrust washer. Is you want to get it greased so you don't have to worry about losing it. But I'm going to get some Hylamar on this surface, and then I will show you how to do the dreaded timing. That blue looks really excessive in the camera. I promise it's not as bad as it looks. So we're going to get the cover started. Sometimes you gotta fight the 2 studs in the main shaft all at the same time, but once you get it kind of balanced, it's usually pretty happy. Right, lay shaft is engaging. I might have to get out the little baby hammer. Alright, we're too close. Okay, so you want to be, you can hear how close I am. Okay, there, that's a little bit better. You want to be just right before you're about to engage, so then you don't have to work too hard. But you're now going to draw a line from the center of your main shaft to the center of this shift bushing, and this tooth is going to be right in line with those two. Let me see if I got a flat surface here. I'm going to draw a line. So center this, and that center tooth. And once those 3 are aligned, then you just kind of keep gently driving it. Alright, it's engaged. So now that's how you know you're going to be timed. Center line, center tooth, good to go. So now we'll get our hardware in. When you draw this in the rest of the way with the hardware, I like to kind of bounce around just to make sure you're not tweaking the cover at all. And we need to go in with this. Something else I talk about a lot in these is how important it is to get your, I don't know if you can see that. See how much you can pull that in and out? So if you assemble your primary side first before you do this, it's going to pull that main shaft too far to your drive side and it's not going to shift properly. So you want to prioritize putting on your kickstart assembly. When you have this all stacked up, when you have all this stacked up on there, it's going to properly space out your main shaft, and then you don't have to worry about anything being misaligned. Well, now that you guys are expert 4-speed transmission builders, I'm gonna put mine together and just do a time lapse. There's really no reason to go over it once again. It's probably hard enough to listen to, so I'm just gonna go ahead, get this one together, and I'll try a time lapse, see how it turns out. Alright, cut 2. His is pretty much done. I always have excuses on this. Again, it got away from me. I was going to show more about this engine, but it just doesn't work out that way. I was hoping to kind of match one for one. I'm going to still try and get my cylinders on tonight, so I'll show you guys that. It'll probably be the next video, but this is as far as I'm taking this engine. He is going to finish. I do have some just junk outer covers that he had sent along just to protect it for shipping, but they're not the nice ones. I think he's actually having some engraved. So that's a whole deal on his. Same with the push rod tubes. I didn't fit those because he has a brand new set. Head bolts, he's got brand new set. He's got his rocker boxes. So I'm done with what I'm going to do. This is kind of how I like doing things. This is about to where it's now just tedious and annoying for me. So this is actually perfect. It worked out great. When he said this is what he wanted to do, I was very on board. So I've got all of the things I like and I find important done. All of the torque values I like to use are applied. Everything else is very owner friendly. So he's a good mechanic. He will definitely do a great job finishing this up. But yeah, so like I said, I was hoping to get more out of this video, but it doesn't always work that way. Trying to keep things moving out the door. You don't always get to film everything you want. So that is this engine, and I will be jumping on and doing that one, but got to get some cool photos of this, so we got mood lighting going. But yeah, so thanks for watching this one. I will start another one, and just whatever I get in it will be the next video.